Hey everyone, happy Saturday to you. I hope all is well. Um, Good job overall on your papers. I was able to, for the ones that I got turned in, I was able to comment on them all. If I haven't, I've been in touch with you about that. Be checking your emails regularly. I may have got away from a couple this week. I've had a unexpected death in the family, and so yeah, I'm sorry. Then my dog's going to do this the whole time because he's needy. But that aside, I've had an unexpected death in the family. So, if I missed an email communication with you, just please resend it. My bad. But what I'm getting from you in the emails is questions that can be answered in the syllabus. So please look there first. If you can't find it, then reach out to me and we can discuss it. Also, looking at some of the DBs, be sure to follow the instructions to the letter, right? The word counts, the responses, and I know they're not due till end of tonight, so I'll recheck that in the morning. But also be sure to turn your work in, guys. Like I can't do that for you, right? So just you'll be such a. I know 2 weeks doesn't seem like long of a difference, but it matters, and you'll be down a letter grade before you know it, right? So just be mindful of that. If you're struggling, let me know. Look, I put a Zoom link in for Thursday night, this coming Thursday, the 5th, I think it is, at 6:30. I'm just going to log on to a Zoom meeting. I put the link in the announcements. And if you want to join. I'm going to wait about 15 minutes. If nobody shows up, I'll log off. It's totally optional. But we can talk about the APA writing. We can talk, which most of you have done pretty okay with that. Some of you have done great with it. We can talk about the course assignments. We can talk about anything you'd like, honestly. I'll stay as long as you need. But I like to do that occasionally, and I have some time this Thursday, so I put a link again. It's not mandatory, it's optional. So yeah, that said, let's wrap up 12-step work, and then we're going to move on to motivational interviewing pretty quickly here. Again, the 12-step philosophy is a wonderful philosophy. It's just not for everybody. And I know many of you in this course come from 12-step backgrounds. As many of us that become LCDCs do, that's where we start, a lot of us, right? But I'm going to encourage you to keep an open mind. As I've said from the very beginning, I'm going to challenge what you think about recovery. Even the word recovery as a clinician sometimes is something we want to move past. I'm of the opinion of whatever works. Right. And, being able to grow and evolve as clinicians and as humans. And I know we do so much evolving early on in a recovering lifestyle. Right. But as clinicians, our job is to help our clients evolve in some way. Right. And that means we have to evolve in our thinking. It can't be this antiquated, this is the only thing that works. If you take Suboxone, you're not sober. Or if you do this, says who? To be honest, Suboxone and medication-assisted treatment is really one of the most solid evidence-based processes we have. I have my personal opinion on it. Yeah, I think you should have an exit plan, and I don't think it should be the first option myself. That doesn't mean that it isn't for a client, though. Do you have clients that sorry, there's a new chair and it's making all kinds of weird noise. It's got this weird massage thing. Anyways, it's pretty awesome, honestly. That said, it's one of those things where, regardless of what I think, doesn't mean it's not helpful for my client. Are there those people who abuse any situation? Of course. We can't control all that, right? So remember, keep working on the language, the addict, the alcoholic. I was just at a presentation by a really esteemed colleague, and I used that phrase on purpose because this dude's smart. He's brilliant. Like, this guy is brilliant. He's a published author of multiple books. Brilliant dude. Pretty down-to-earth guy. But I left this CE very disappointed in that, if I heard the addict one more time, and I'm like, come on, man, we're professionals. Like, I don't know. It's just, there's lots of research to support that we should be changing our language in that setting. Again, if I go to a meeting, for example, fine, that's their norm. It is Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. That's fine. Like, I'm damn an alcoholic. I have no issue with that in that setting. But remember, we're not in that setting as clinicians, right? We're in a much different setting, as we should be. Does that mean we don't get to use our clinical or mix our clinical skill with our lived 12-step experience or knowledge? Of course not. Like, I use 12-step integration with every single person I work with. No joke. Without exception. Whether they know it or not. Like, I don't advertise, hey, I'm going to mix in some 12-step philosophy here. I know you don't have a drinking or a drug problem, but hear me out, right? No, we just talk about the same principles. I just reframe it in clinical language, right? We'll talk more about that, but that's again, we can talk about that Thursday if you want to join. Just on a side note, I'm always happy to just meet with you on Zoom individually as well anytime. Just keep that in mind because I love this work. I love teaching you guys. I love watching this switch come about at some point from member of recovery to more clinical thinking versus or just someone new and experiencing this for the first time, right? So I mentioned in several of your papers to reach out to me so we can discuss it. I'm going to encourage you to do that. I'm not going to make you. Obviously, I can't do that. Don't want to do that. You're grown. So if you want to have a deeper understanding of why I'm asking you or why you got the grades you got, please reach out to me if I asked you to do that. It's only for your benefit. So that said, 12-step philosophy. Wonderful. They believe in the medical model. You have a disease. Hijacks your brain, classifying it as your brain's reward center, classifying it as a brain disease. You come into this program, you admit powerlessness, unmanageability. You work this process, these 12 steps, ideally. You find a higher power. There's a lot into that. I'm not going to get into that here, but there's a lot involved in that for a lot of people. They tell you they will separate spirituality and religion, yet they close with religious prayer. So it's a bit of a mixed message there. Not good or bad, just mixed, right? Overall, I think that philosophy is phenomenal. You look within. You do in this step work, you do these fearless and moral inventory, they call it, right? What's my part in every situation? And this is how I work with clients in a 12-step integration, because we're all, whether I call it that or not, that's where it comes from. We're always using what we know because it makes sense to me. And with CBT work, motivational interviewing, it makes sense, right? What is your part? What can you control here, right? We get into things like acceptance doesn't mean approval necessarily. This is where we guide as clinicians, right? So that said, you practice this acceptance on the things you can't control. You have this higher power, right? And then you make these amends to people, and then you kind of clean your slate, so to speak, the best you can. And then you work with others. That's the program. In a nutshell, and a different way of saying it without all the recovery jargon is, then this is how I'm able to use this 12-step integration with every client is, it says be a good human. Control what I can control, practice acceptance on the things I can't, live in the moment, live in gratitude. It's a pretty solid philosophy of living, if you ask me. Again, not for everybody, I guess, but it's a pretty solid philosophy. But what you get is people get hung up on the higher power or the admission of powerlessness. And, one way as clinicians we frame this is, or as I frame this is, in essence, though, I hear you. Like I hear you, especially when you have a professional who's been successful by controlling his or her entire career, right? Making things happen. So now they've got this association as that's what success is. Now we're telling them, nah, that's not it here. It doesn't work here. Well, I don't know, man. It's we still have to make choices, right? But I would say that by admitting this powerlessness, it then empowers me to make different choices, right? And that powerlessness doesn't mean every time I look at a drink, I'm powerless, or a drug necessarily. I mean, I don't know. We're all very different there, right? I explain it like this a lot of times. I know that many of us feel like we have these internal switches. And with someone without a disorder, a substance use disorder, they start I'm going to say alcohol, because like you get into cocaine or opiates, it's very different. But with drinking in particular, they have this switch, and it, as people start getting tipsy and they're buzzed, and they flick that switch, and for the most part they tone it down. Maybe they tie one on occasionally, whatever. Maybe same thing with opioids. You take what the doctor gives you, one or two, whatever it is, and you're like, I don't want to do that, and they don't, right? For people with disorders, though, with that powerlessness piece, I'll take this to my grave that this is a thing. I mean, I've lived it, as many of you have, is that when that disorder, when that thing hijacks my brain, when I ingest substances, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, my brain reacts differently than someone without a disorder. And I have a double on switch. And so when I should be shutting that switch down, my switches flick on. And I will swear on my grave, that is out of my control. There's my powerlessness. That doesn't mean I'm not going to stop. That doesn't mean I might not stop for a day, 2 days, 10 days. I don't know. People that drink as binge drinkers can stop for months and still be powerless over alcohol, right, or drugs. So it's a very fascinating conversation. But people hear what they want to hear. People believe what they believe, and that's okay. Everybody's got a philosophy. Overall, the value of a program like that, the connection. And there's nothing like that. They have the market cornered on that type of connection. I'll tell you. And I think for many of us, that's a wonderful thing. But again, just because it was a need for me, on a personal note, doesn't mean it's a need for my client. I can say all day long, I think there's value here. But what I want to do, and this gets us into the motivational interviewing coming up, the night we're going to spend 2 weeks here, is we roll with that resistance. I'm not here to tell you what to do. Right? Hear this. My job as a clinician is to walk with you through your choices, not to choose for you. Right? Go to 10 meetings this week. Go to 7 meetings. 90 meetings in 90 days. What you got to do. I understand the message there. And as a member of a 12-step community, I might say that, hey, this is what you need to do. As a clinician, however, I would frame that as, let's talk about the potential benefits of something consistent. How do you think that would benefit you? What do you think the drawbacks are of something like that? Because when I start telling people they got to do 90 meetings in 90 days, here's what happens often is they start bargaining with themselves. Well, I'll go to 3 this weekend. Won't go to 2. That's not the point. The point is to go off. So just go as often as you can, right? But we'll frame that very differently from more of a clinical perspective. Let's have them tell us, as our clients, what they think, because they're the experts on them, and we can argue all day long. Your best thinking got you here. Well, it got me here. It also got me a degree. It got me a family. It got me a lot of things. So don't be so dismissive. Again, in the setting, one thing. In a clinical office, totally different. Well, how can this potentially help me? Well, here's what I understand about the program. Right? This is why I send you to somewhere you've never been. It's so important we know our resources and know not just that they're there, understand a little bit about their inner workings, right? So that we can educate a client. Well, this is what I know about Celebrate Recovery. This is what I can tell you about Smart Recovery. This is what I can tell you about AA, NA, CA, AAA, MBA, right? You get the idea. I don't want to influence my client's decision and say, well, I really like this. Doesn't matter what I like. What are they willing to do? That's motivational interviewing, right? And if you take a page from AA in particular, which is the grandfather of all this recovery, right? And I know many of you know your history here. And it's when Bill W. stayed sober for that first 6 months, or I think it was 6 months, whatever it was, and he tried to tell people what to do. Not one person on record stayed sober, right? It wasn't until he met Dr. Bob and them two started to say, they coined the phrase experience, strength, and hope. We'll just tell people this is what we did. Maybe you'll do it. Maybe it'll work for you. A program's born. 90-something years later, it's still around, right? There's power in that. That's motivational interviewing, whether they knew it then or not, right? Motivational interviewing, I'll tell you this, students love this probably more than anything else we do in this class these 2 weeks, because we spend 2 weeks on it, because it's important. I'll tell you as a 16-year clinician, motivational interviewing and cognitive behavioral therapy are the foundation of what I do to this day, right? Now, not everybody does, and that's okay. I work with the substance use population more than anything, and it's the very foundational piece I do. What are you willing to do, right? I don't have to confront you as a clinician. I let the truth do the confronting. We like the on one hand statement, right? On one hand, you're saying, you don't want your family to fall apart and you don't want your spouse to leave. On the other hand, you're doing dope in the back room 5 nights a week. Make it make sense. Like, you know what I mean? Those two things aren't congruent. My behavior is not aligned with what my thinking is, right? And so how can we rectify that? How can you get as a client get that closer, right? I'm not here to say, well, that's never going to work. Like, well, what are you willing to change on that? Motivational interviewing is wonderful. It's what probably you will think of as counseling in this class, right? Meaning, many people every semester are like, well, what does going to these meetings have to do with counseling? Everything. Counseling we think of as the one-on-one. Hence, motivational interviewing is going to resonate with you greatly. I hope. It typically does with students. But the counseling as a profession, our role, we're educators, we're case managers, we're business associates, not associates as in together. I mean, we handle finance, some of us. We there's a lot. As a private person in private practice, I have to handle my finances with clients. There's lots of roles we take. Facilitator for group, educator, and then the one-on-one. So going to knowing our resources, getting out in our community is certainly a piece of our responsibility. So yeah, I love these next 2 weeks. You have chapter 3 and then you take your quiz, and then you have your next DB on the positive psychology article. It's a wonderful article. I think you'll really like it. Then you're on spring break. Then we're halfway through with the course and you do your smart recovery paper. So I'll do another video between now and then as we get closer to tell you a little bit more about I love smart recovery. Just a bit of insight into it if you're not familiar is SMART Recovery is an acronym that stands for Self-Management and Recovery Training. They're the antithesis of 12-step work, right? They don't believe you need a higher power to do this. They don't need you. They don't believe you need a big group. They don't believe it's a disease. They believe it's a thinking error. They're rooted in cognitive behavioral therapy. As a clinician, I love that. I couldn't love that more. The facilitators have to take a training. They don't just have people up there, which there's nothing wrong with that. Having people up there, that's fine too. I'm just telling you what they do. I've taken their training. I would encourage all of you as students. I think they charge $50 for the training. I took it not because I wanted to lead a smart recovery group. I've never led one, don't care to lead one. I took it because I wanted to learn more about the program. What I found was I took it early enough in my career that it helped me to be a better clinician. Learning CBT, it just enhanced my CBT skills in some way. It was a wonderful training, really good. So I encourage you to do that. Again, they have student discounts, but I think both can have merit, and this is where my 12-step people struggle often. Is no, it's not a thinking error. It's not a choice, right? It's this disease, and both can be true. Right, if I come to a T in the road and to the right is drinking or drug use and to the left is not, is that a disease or a choice that makes me turn? I think it's a choice. That said, one could easily argue with merit that if I have this disease that's hijacked my brain's reward center, isn't that guiding my choices? Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And as I just discussed a second ago, when that double switch kicks on, and I'll tell you that's out of my control. I will take that to my grave saying that's out of my control. I struggle to say that's a choice at that point. However, isn't everything we do, recovery, outside of recovery, just life, isn't it about a series of choices? Look, if I get sober, I still got to choose to go to these meetings. When I choose to go to the meetings, I got to choose to engage. Or if I don't choose to go to meetings, that's still a choice. I got to choose to take whatever plan of action works for me. If it's MAT treatment, if it's no treatment, if it's inpatient treatment, if it's church, if it's I just, whatever it is that's working for you, you still have to choose to do it, and then you have to choose to engage in it, and you continually have to choose to do it. So, a really true story, I think the two work really well together, SMART and 12-step work. I can remember getting into AA early on, all those years ago, and then reading that, I think it's 417, acceptance is the answer to all my problems. And that resonated with me immediately. Because I know, man, I'm limited to what I can change. Right? So much of it I don't have any part of, any choice. Right? And I said, fast track me there. And they laughed at me, of course, and said, keep coming back. And, I understand that value too. Enter SMART recovery. I wish I would have known about it then, because they give me concrete tools, i.e. CBT work, cognitive behavioral therapy, to help me get to that place of acceptance if I'm willing to do that work. The two really go well. So really what I found a really good ideal place for many people, if they can get their head wrapped around this, is a 12-step foundation in some way, or a refuge recovery foundation, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the course, with a supplemental SMART. I have lots of people that just go to SMART, like mostly they're online. Again, they're about self-management, recovery training. I like the connection piece, but again, it doesn't matter what I like. It's what my clients like and what they're willing to do. So yeah, guys, I look forward to wrapping up your DBs tomorrow. Remember, please revisit some of the APA. If you need help, consider joining Thursday. Because the rules are pretty clear. The guidelines are pretty clear on what the expectations are on these assignments. I've done videos. I've made it pretty easy for you to get. You just have to revisit some of them maybe, or reach out to me. So yeah, guys, do that. I hope to see some of you Thursday at 6:30. Like I said, it's not mandatory. But if you feel like there's something you could use some help with, it'd be a good time to join. Or if you just want to chop it up about recovery, the private practice, inpatient treatment, anything at all related to this field of study or work, happy to do it. So guys, have a great week. I really look forward to your thoughts on motivational interviewing. Chapter 3 this week, quiz 2, and probably won't do a video after next week. Until the following week when you wrap up motivational interviewing. But again, I hope to see some of you on Thursday, and either way, have a great week, and we'll talk soon.